Hello and welcome to the Christian Therapist Podcast. Lindsay Castleman here, and of course, joined by my friend and fellow therapist, Aron Strong. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time people are listening to the podcast.
Right?
Good day. Hello to you, Aron.
Good day to you, man.
Good day. All day, the entire day. Why not? Why not? Well, I was telling you earlier, man, because we just got back from a vacation that was like 5 or 6 hour time zone difference. So
Yeah, that's
I
huge.
do feel like I'm in a time warp of,
You
of
don't
it
you
was
don't know what time of day it is, at least your body doesn't.
no, my body does not because it still thinks it's like 5 hours earlier. But
Yeah.
anyways, Aaron, we're here
Hello. That's
in the same time zone,
right.
which is good, which is good. Well, so here
Whatever
it
time it
is.
is, it's always a good time when I'm with you.
There we go. That's almost like a Hallmark card, or a t-shirt or a
Whenever I
mug.
do that to my wife, she just rolls her eyes. Like,
She's like, oh
whatever.
my gosh. I know, I know. Well, and didn't you tell me she was like, she's just not the type that even digs like flowers. She's like, I don't want flowers. Oh, there are
Yeah,
other
she
things
likes
I
acts of
like.
service. If I pick
Mhm.
wildflowers on the side of the road,
Oh, that's
that
right.
will mean something, right? But if
Yes.
not, if I just buy flowers, she just like, I don't care about that.
Yeah. 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 I like it. She's like, nope, not
Nope.
digging any of that.
Right. You got
There.
to earn it.
Right, right, right. Well, Aaron, we are doing our series of what is really happening with dot, dot, dot. And
Yes.
it's funny because each time we come up with the topic, it usually has something to do with something we've just walked through.
Yeah.
But with that, kind of, I don't know if we do a drum roll or whatever, but our new topic, well, not new topic, but next part of the series is what's really happening with the super strict parent.
Yes.
And we see that a lot in our practice. We also, I'm sure, have personal stories. I know I have personal stories, which is kind of what this came out of, but it's just what's happening with that super strict parent.
Hmm.
And I was telling you, man, being around some super strict parents recently, it it can be very hard. Maybe I'll just speak for me personally. It can be hard for me personally because I have put so much time, effort, wanting to learn really how to show up well as a parent and really starting to get how big attunement and presence is in parenting
Hmm.
and being able to not force my child to enter into my world, into who I think he should be, who I want him to be, but really getting to know who God made him to be and growing that, which honestly, I had someone break down that passage for me of like train up a child in the way that they should go.
Hmm.
And in that passage, starting to help me see and understand that it's not train them up like you're enslaving them, right?
Right.
But it is more of you think of that training like athletes or that training of, hey, we're learning what we're good at.
Hmm.
Maybe it's basketball, maybe it's
Hmm.
soccer. And I'm not talking about everything in sports, but just when we get to know our kid, when we get to know who God made them, they could be so different from us, and they should be different than
Yeah.
us because they're their own individual. But really being able to get to know them and to start to train them up in those ways that God has created them to be, which has
Yeah.
been interesting for me because I was a A++ student, got checked all the boxes, and then realizing for my own kiddo like traditional school is not his jam, and that's okay. Like, I don't need to try to fit him in that box. I need
Yeah.
to start to discover what he is good at and really bring that up. So that's a long, 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 long way to say that when I start to get around parents that are super strict, man, I can I can find myself getting really triggered because man, it can feel like I'm watching their kid be put in a box, which is
Hmm.
hard because I've done so much learning and work and even just trying to understand God's way around that.
Yeah.
You
I think that I think we do agree that, our belief of like what's the purpose of life, right, was
know?
we are to grow into the fullness of who God designed us to be.
Yes.
Like there's this image that God put inside of us that in its maturity, in its full development, there's a version of us that is trying to emerge, that God designed us, the perfect vision of who we'd be. Now that may be not completed until we get to heaven,
Hmm.
but part of what we're doing in life is we are walking with Him through that transformation process to grow into this fullness. Because eventually we'll look back at the end of life, you look back at your life and see how well did I do that? Right? How
Hmm.
close did I get? And we kind of evaluate our own life that way in the end of life. So when we look at parenting, right, that's the kind of the perspective we're bringing. It's not necessarily free range parenting that we're talking about,
Right.
but it is how do you help your child begin this process of development of who they're designed to be, what's unique about them, alongside with just the normal skills and difficulties required to engage life.
Hmm.
Right. And so there's this balance of development with structure that
Hmm.
helps hold that. And so in some ways, whatever the structure the family has is the crucible or is the container in which development occurs. Right.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's a very closed box. Sometimes, right, you're not even sure where the edge of that box are. Like that container doesn't even have edges to the container. There's just open. So when we're looking at this sense of the super strict parent, this is a parent who's coming in that is really, really concerned with what's right, with what is required to navigate life. It's high skill, high structure, high performance, right? These things are super important because there's some, I was thinking about this as we were introducing the topic. I wonder what percentage of our audience right now is a super strict parent, and they're going, "What do you? Yeah, who are those people? They don't even know it's them, right?" Or they're like, "What? What are you talking about? This is the way it
Sure.
should be, right?" So I want to
Hmm.
normalize. There's a reason why we can come at it from a very high structure, rigid process.
Sure.
Uh, but the danger I hear you describing is the danger is that the structure begins to supersede the development process, right? And the task
Hmm.
of being right or doing right is asserted over that sense of helping a child grow into the fullness of
Hmm.
who God's designed them to be, alongside the skills that are required, right, to do
Hmm.
your homework or go to bed or whatever the rules are.
Right, for sure. Because some people could look at me and go, man, you are more of a strict parent in the sense that I look at myself as protective, in that there are many kiddos my kids' age that are having cell phones, and we are not having a cell phone yet. I mean, there's just things that as I attune to my kid and walk alongside of him in these things, I'm like, God, that's not something that he's ready for, nor do I want to expose him to that yet.
Mhm.
There are different things so I'm glad you're clarifying where you're like, okay, there's a protectiveness because we protect them from the world, from the things that their little limited brains don't need unlimited access to. So there is that protection around them, but there's just a place of this rigidity that can show up that, like you were saying, it supersedes the actual relationship. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that the relationship means the kids always need to be happy or good with you, right? It means that we are attuning into is what we're doing, is it edifying? Is it learning? Are our kids responding to it? You
Mhm.
know, or is it kind of what I can see with super strict parents? Is it using almost like one tool in their toolbox
Right.
and not learning and gaining more. And that it's like the kids should respond to my harsh tone. The kids should respond to the super swift and the big kind of out of context or out of, it's not aligned with what's happening,
Hmm.
punishment that I'm giving them.
Yeah.
There's
The
just,
expectation that they should have known before they made the mistake, they already knew. Why would they, like, they should have already known.
mhm, sure,
It's so
sure.
like this feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
And what you're describing too is that it's not that they're not loving and caring other places,
Right, right.
right? So
Yeah.
it's not about being loving your kid or being connected to them. It has to do with like in the moment of infraction
Hmm.
or in fear of infraction or danger
Hmm.
or out of protection, this really rigid structure gets
Hmm.
overlaid kind of over everything
Yes. And
and
when
how
I,
they
yeah,
respond.
totally. Because when I watch or when I'm in that presence, I think I told you this before, and when we were just chatting earlier, I was like, man, it can feel like I'm watching two dysregulated people at the same time,
Sure, yeah.
right? So we're not the adult that's regulated. My friend Aaliyah says, someone always needs to be the captain of the ship. Otherwise, it's
Hmm.
going to go down, right? But
Right,
it's like both are not regulated. It's like the behavior of the kid triggers something in the adult, and then the adult like reacts in a way that is over the top, reacts in a way that is too strict, too quick, and it doesn't feel like there is then a coordination between
right,
the two. And there's
right.
definitely not an understanding or a slowing down or trying to help what just happened in the kiddo.
Mhm.
That's out the window. It's moving into this place where the parent is going, okay, you now need to align with me, right?
Mhm.
It's my way or the highway. And it just really is like I watch and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's not a coordination
Yep.
happening or any kind of co-regulation
Yeah.
happening.
And that can happen in the infraction. The moment an infraction occurs, the structure's been
Mhm.
broken. It elicits this big response
Mhm.
to, and really it's trying to restore the structure as fast as possible, right?
Mhm.
But it also can happen, that lack of coordination can often happen in requests. Hey, can I go do this thing with my friends? No. Why? Because that's the rule. Right?
Mhm.
Because of da, 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 da. And you already know that. Why would you even ask? So there's not even a sense of
Mhm.
like trying to understand what's being asked for, why that is.
Mhm.
Even if the answer is no, that sense of coordination to help them explore the whys or walk it through, to help them understand why the rule, it just solves the rule immediately because the
Mhm.
request is a threat. And so that threat is cut off very quickly, even when there's not
Right.
an infraction yet. It has the potential for failure, right? Um, and then that is guarded against, kind of.
Hmm. Yes. Well, and the question that we have here is, okay, what is happening in this strict parent,
Yes.
right? In this super strict parent where we're not leaving a whole lot of room for understanding. And we can tell a dysregulation is happening.
Hmm.
Even in an instance that I just experienced, there was like this incredible high with some of the kiddos because they had just won something. And
Hmm.
then the parent came in because the kiddo said one little thing in a way that they perceived it to be disrespect. And then I watched the parent just go after their kiddo and berate them in front of their teammates, in front of, I mean, it was just too much. And it wasn't even a tune for like everybody's just so excited. Everybody's like, yes. And then boom, here it comes. And I just was sitting there just watching them going, man. Like that one thing, that one little perceived moment of disrespect, and it actually wasn't disrespectful,
Hmm.
flew all over you. and you can't even see yourself anymore.
Right.
Right? There's a thing happening in there that's so big that it takes over the moment, it takes over the relationship, it takes over the potential connection that they could have had even in sharing in the joy of the moment.
Sure. Or even delaying that moment and coming back to it, right, to
Right.
capture the moment. I think it's very difficult when, for people that uh, have a high sense of righteousness, like things that are right and wrong, right?
Hmm.
Enneagram ones, right? People who have this sense of things that are right should be right and things that are wrong are clearly wrong and they have to be
Hmm.
addressed. That when something wrong happens, the frame of right and wrong is so forward that it's easy to miss the internal emotional experience you're having about it.
Yes.
Like I don't even notice how strongly or how dysregulated I am, how harsh I can sound because my nervous system has prioritized the infraction as the threat. So
Hmm.
everything is oriented towards the threat, and I don't even notice what's happening in my own body in the
Hmm.
presence of that reaction, or really its impact on the relationship because I'm not thinking about the relationship. I'm thinking about what's right and what's wrong. And
Hmm.
it becomes structural. The relationship or the interaction becomes structural, not relational. And while that structural part is true, and that I mean, even if it was disrespectful, it
Hmm.
loses context of the whole because that becomes the threat. The failure, the infraction, the failure of structure is the threat. So that is the only thing that exists, and we just miss
Hmm.
everything else that goes on because it goes super fast.
Yes.
They don't
Yes.
even, and then they don't even are aware of it because it's all about the thing.
Right, right. And I think what you're talking about and what we're starting to look at is there is an internal framework that does show up. And for us as clinicians, it's important to have our clients start to slow down, to wonder what is that message? What is that framework? Is it, like you're saying, the Enneagram 1, where they go, there's a right and there's a wrong. And anything that feels like it is getting outside of that, we've got to put it back in,
Right.
right? Because we need to know that that's something that can lead the way for us.
Hmm.
Because it's our job to steward that. It's our job to slow that down, to lead it. Because the irony that I find is that that's usually what they are requiring and wanting everybody else to do.
Right.
Is anything else that's showing up in their kiddo, they're wanting their kiddo to lead that, to be
Hmm.
responsible for it. But then the going back to, and maybe it's irony and it can also feel hypocritical, is they're not leading that in themselves. So they look dysregulated
Right.
with kids who are also dysregulated, but
It's
requiring it's essentially like, I need for you to be sure to lead this so that we don't get out of this right and wrong pathway, because then that I don't feel good.
right. And there's a sense, like in America and in Western culture right now, as a whole, this sense of if I'm right, then my righteousness, like anything I do within my righteousness, is kind of allowed because I'm
Mhm.
right. Right. It gives you a
Mhm.
permission to act out in a certain way. And we don't think about that while I may be addressing something wrong, I may be right, but how I'm going about it could be wrong. I'm doing it in a wrong way. And I
Correct.
miss my own failure. And when I pride myself in knowing what's right, I can miss how I don't do what's right at times or increasing the load, right? If there's a sense of if I want a kid to behave well and respond well, increasing their allostatic load to gain better performance doesn't work, right? Their sense of internal distress dysregulates them, that impairs their ability to engage their agency and their will, and that makes it hard to engage in that moment, right? They're just either going to blow up or they're going to collapse, they're going to do something versus a different ways that ride an edge of in conveying importance without overloading or over distressing. So I'm keeping them in the moment. I'm helping them hold that issue. But I've lost my own ability to recognize where I'm at on the edge. I just vent all of my distress at the infraction towards the object of my ire,
Mm-hmm.
and then they become a recipient that not only has failed a moment, now they've failed this relationship, and there's really not a path to repair if I'm so activated, because the only way in a super strict parent sometimes to repair the relationship is for the child not to fail that way again.
Right.
And when does that happen?
Right.
Like, and then that's a non-event. A not failure isn't doesn't really function as a repair because it's a non-event, right? Is
Hmm.
it's nothing happened, right? Because nothing failed.
Yeah.
Um, in that sense of what do we do with failure and how do we manage failure as an experience is so critical to development in life, right?
Yeah.
Because failure is going to happen.
Yes. Well, and you're, talking to and explaining more just about that importance of for us as parents, like how much we do have to slow down our reactions
Yep.
and to be able to go, oh my goodness. And this goes back to a lot of even what I've learned from, I never say his name right, but like Gabor Mate, where there's that place of, as children, a lot of times the way that parents can parent is a way that we either have to trade our authenticity for connection or
Mhm.
we trade connection for authenticity. I think I said that correctly. But the place essentially is, and this is what I can see with super strict parents, is I can be the kiddo that will hide or put aside or not be in tune with what I feel or what's happening within me so that I can stay alert to show up to please that super strict parent. So I'm
Hmm.
staying connected to them.
Right. Hmm.
And sometimes what I'll do is I'll probably even emulate exactly the way that parent shows up. So they'll look and be like, whoa, they're like a little me. I'm feeling really good about how I'm
Yep.
parenting them because they're not pushing against me at all. Like
Hmm.
we're right in step.
Yep.
But what we have to sit back and go is that kid could be trading their authenticity. They don't really know who they are, but they do know who you are.
Right.
And so that's the sad part. But then you've got those, and usually they're the kiddos that can end up in, our therapy offices that are the ones that can be more the problem child because they're kind of going, I don't care to be connected to that. I just want to show up authentically me
Right.
in this way. I'm going to feel things big and I'm going to feel things small and I'm going to push against you and I'm going to rebel against this. And so we'll have those kids. And that's kind of how they can start to show up and grow up. And usually they can be the black sheep of the family, but a lot of times that black sheep is kind of showing like, hey, there's something in this family system that's not functioning well.
Right.
It can usually be a really good wake-up call to slow down and go, something's not going right here. They're rebelling against it.
And that frame is such a complicated frame, I think.
Sure, sure.
Because as we started talking about, if the goal is to grow into the fullness of who we are created to be, but we aren't yet,
Right.
to what am I being authentic?
Hmm.
Right? I authentically don't want to follow your rule.
Sure.
Right? I authentically want to blow up when I'm not happy because
Hmm.
that seems true, but authentic doesn't necessarily just mean true. authentic has a lot to do with what our identity is and
Right.
who we're designed to be that's in line with our character.
Hmm.
And children don't know who that is. They learn who they are by the way we engage with them
Right.
to help them discover things that feel congruent rather than things that feel true as a reaction against.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
It's true that I don't like when you yell at me like that, and it makes me not want to follow what you say for a more rebellious child.
Hmm.
Or for a more compliant child, apparently my identity is one who holds all the distress of others so I can feel safe.
Hmm.
That's not authentic either, but
Right.
it's true, like, because they
Right.
feel that way.
Right.
And so we're looking for something deeper in authenticity that is discovered. It's not just simply what's true in the moment, and we can conflate those two things.
Right.
But then the issue of failure comes in,
Hmm.
right? Because one of the things we often say is that one of the greatest gifts we give a child is the freedom to fail.
Hmm.
It's the freedom to try and explore and find the edge of their capacity and see where that lives or where that kind of collapses and how to work against that edge. And we forget that sometimes that also includes following rules, right? And thinking they could get away with it, or not knowing that, like, believing consequences would be real, or
Hmm.
every dad's out there like, let him jump off the back of the couch. He'll learn. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? There's a
Hmm.
freedom to fail, and the mom's like, he's gonna break an arm, and he's like, it'll heal, but he'll learn
Yeah.
not to jump off the back of the couch. There's that sense of protection versus freedom to fail has boundaries, and we're all trying to work out
Hmm.
where that is, and there's a dynamic in there.
Right.
But
And age
but
appropriateness.
right.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so they can't. They're if they're like they're two, they're not going to remember.
No, no.
But
Right.
that's just called falling.
Yes.
But that sense of where are we engaging, where a rule is, where structure is really needed for protection. How do we engage that sense of that boundary and how do we navigate those boundary violations in that regard? And it's just difficult for kind of like these two sides of a super strict parent, one that becomes flooded in the breach, and then they vent their distress to the child, or the one that is like super cold and rigid, right, and won't empathize with a child, right? I remember my dad was probably more the cold one. He was never hot. I never got yelled at, but boy, I could get a lecture like nobody's business and all the 5 point sermon on why I was about to get a whooping. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean?
Uh-huh.
Where you're just like, just spank me already and get it over with. God, you're talking to me like
Sure.
that. You know what I
Sure.
mean? But he
Yeah.
was like laying out his structured argument, of all the things. Um, so there's just a lot of different ways to wrestle with it. But that fear,
Hmm.
that sense of righteousness is one reason we talked about kind of
Right.
that fear of failure, that fear of lack of protection,
Mhm.
a fear of not parenting right,
Yes.
can show up, that really kind of holds on that rigidity.
Hmm. Well, and too, Aaron, you had mentioned there is a place of, and sorry, I feel like might be because I've not gotten much sleep, but man, my throat, I'm like, oh,
Ugh.
um, that there is a place of pushing against what you did get, right? I know
Hmm.
you had mentioned that before. If you wanted to share a little bit more about
Yeah.
that.
There's often, one of the universal rules of parenting is a lot of the ways that we parent is shaped by how we were parented.
Sure.
Uh, because you did something while your brain was forming. And so all of those experiences just get hardwired into your brain. And there are things that we do that were done to us, and then there's things we reject and we push against. So there is a sense of like if you grow up in a very chaotic home life, if you
Hmm.
grow up where there wasn't people there that cared about what was right, to protect you from what was wrong, to give you a sense of direction or security, because boundaries provide security, right? If there's no fence, your young child in the backyard, it's very scary. Anything could happen to them. The
Right.
fence makes us feel safe for them to play back there because they can't go anywhere. They're within a frame that framework holds them securely. Boundaries do that in relationships, right? They create security when you grow up in a very chaotic family where there are no boundaries, then then you can react against that chaos with rigidity. And because we don't know what balance looks like, right? What we do is we often try to just do the opposite. And
Hmm.
it kind of swings a pendulum really far, and we can end up being super strict as a reaction against the chaos of our own growing up years or childhood. My mom was pretty controlling. Her childhood was absolutely chaotic. Like there was no
Sure.
structure anywhere, no sense of care, a lot of abuse. And so her care led to more strict, more control, relationally, not really. My dad was more structurally rigid, mom was more relationally rigid, but that sense of reacting against what you had can lead you to try to solve a problem, but you don't have a model of what it's supposed to look like. You just know what it's not supposed to look like,
Hmm.
and that can swing a pendulum. But the mirror of that is like sometimes we can resist what we didn't get. And so if you grew up in a rigid family and there wasn't a lot of grace, the idea of giving a lot of grace feels foreign and wrong,
Hmm.
right? You're
Hmm.
like, there's not grace when you make a mistake. What are you talking about? That doesn't exist. That's never existed. And you're like, no, but you can just be different. And you're like, there's just something in you that goes, that feels wrong.
Hmm.
Just has never existed. And
Hmm.
so you resist to provide what you never got. And
Right.
so that balance of reacting against what you did get and then the difficulty to provide what you didn't get, like often can provide a frame on how we show up in
Mhm.
parenting.
Yeah. And as you're talking and as we're laying this out, I'm sitting back and going, man, for us as therapists, this is really pointing to the importance of kind of slowing down those moments when our client is talking to us about their experience with their child, their experience with whomever could be triggering in the moment or could be frustrating in the moment, or it would even just be a good question to wonder with your client about what happens when there is that moment between them and their kiddo. Because as we start to slow it down, a lot of these frameworks are going to show up in the messages that we tell ourselves in those moments. Right? So when your kiddo is saying this to you, acting this way, showing up, what do you start to say to yourself? Right? What
Mhm.
are those messages that show up for you? And sometimes we don't know. We have to wonder, we have to slow down. We have to take ourselves back to that moment. We have to actually start to listen and
Yeah.
hear because there is a message that's starting to lead the way here. And that message is going to come from something. Like it didn't just show up out of nowhere.
Right.
It came from some experience or multiple experiences over time. And those are places that we're going to have to start to really, really pay attention to because this is what starts to take us over
Hmm.
in those moments. And this is when we can start to lose that presence and attunement with our child because we are now having to move to taking care of what's happening within our kiddo to taking care of something that's happening within us. And we
Yeah.
don't even know that we made that shift.
Right. Remembering to wonder is the hardest thing.
Yes.
Right? Remembering even just to recognize what's happening within myself, because we become so externally focused on navigating the moment. Because we
Mhm.
have a child and we're responsible for that child, and it's kind of terrifying, and they have a brain in their head. That young people have this perspective of kids I did when you're like, just tell your kid what to do, control your child, and then you get to have a child, and you're like, ah, you can't control that thing. It's got its own brain. It does whatever it wants. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'll
Right.
figure this out. But that's because it's so externally focused on what do I do with this situation out here. I'm not looking at what to do with the situation in myself.
Yes.
I don't even think about it, right?
Right.
I forget to wonder and ask all those beautiful questions that you had but that sense of discovery of like that meta awareness, like a meta perspective, to see not just what I'm doing, but to see myself in the situation as a whole is a huge perspective shift to kind of look at a larger scenario, not just the child as a problem, but as a structural unit. What are we doing as a family around this, and how do we navigate that together? And especially if you're married, you have a partner, you're co-parenting, there's two of you have to coordinate together around how to navigate these situations with your child or your children. And we know that this is true also, right? So there's almost always a counterbalance. Like if you have a super strict parent, usually the other one's pretty generous, right? And so there's this like this attempt to find symmetry or balance in there. But leading with intention, leading with awareness, and trying to gain a meta, even if I can't do it in the moment, afterwards to reflect, to become aware. And even if we are a parent I can be an overreactor at times and just get overwhelmed in the moment and let loose, right?
Oh, sure.
And
Same.
but then even when I know that I do that, it's when I recognize my role in that. It's how I model repair. It's
Right.
how I'm addressing my own sense of failure, and not just the child is the only one that fails, that I also fail in how I show up or how I held a boundary or how I addressed it, and then modeling repair with my child in humility. Those are just as critical a training a moment around structure and what's right by how I model that, my ownership of my own failure, to
Hmm.
counterbalance how I'm holding them accountable for their failure.
Right, right. And that's the place I'm glad you just went to, because that is that the wondering that we have within us starts to give us words that we can use to go own how we showed up with our kid,
Hmm.
to be able to say that was a me thing. Now the disrespect, not okay. And the way that I then reacted and showed up also wasn't okay.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
It doesn't mean one's okay, one's not. They both cannot be okay. But
Right.
it's going back to what you said even earlier is we still do need to address that. It's the way
Right.
that we address it. And is it one where we are moving not into punishment just for the sake of punishment, but a discipline. And a discipline's different than punishment, and that a discipline is for the sake of learning, it is for the sake of growing. And a discipline is more attuned to like the infraction that's happening, but what could be happening underneath that infraction in our kiddo,
Yeah.
because that's what we're wanting for them to then learn how to do it differently, not just stop the behavior. We're
Right.
wanting to learn, man, what's going on? What are different words we could use? What are different ways that we could get our needs met here other than this,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it's going to help their development.
Yeah. It's very complicated if I address your disrespect disrespectfully.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And the kid knows. I mean, the
He
kid,
knows. He's like,
yes.
you're not respectful, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, and that even for me, I know you were talking about your dad and how he would lecture and then spank, but even for me, I just young when my kiddo was younger was just like, I cannot spank you and also tell you not to hit people.
Right?
Like just within me, I was like, I can't do that. And
Hmm.
so I mean, as a little guy, I was like, but I just don't think I can spank you because it just doesn't feel right.
Right?
Like to say, don't do this, but then I'm doing this to you. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. And it was funny. He would go tell people, he'd be like, my mom doesn't spank me, you know.
He's so proud of
He was
it.
like, because she realized, I'm like, okay. It was really funny, but there is that place of, okay, now I've got to own if I
Yeah.
showed up mean, and I have showed up mean. But all of these are where, man, I've had to walk it back, and I've had to do the wondering, I've had to do the exploring, I've had to do the like search
Yep.
me and know me, like find these offensive ways in me and let's bring it out, because I don't want to keep doing that. Like I want to do better.
Yeah.
And I want to be more attuned to what's happening in my kid and beneath the surface for my kid too. But I can't if I'm having to constantly attend to what's happening in me, you
And
know?
I think that that's such a huge piece of parenting is the relationship. It's not just
Hmm.
top down. There's a
Right.
relationship in that dynamic of what who is my child and what is effective for them. You know, the research on on spanking is that there are children for whom spanking is a great consequence, and
Hmm.
there are children for whom spanking just normalizes hitting,
Right.
right? It has a lot to do with what kids you got. And the parenting
Hmm.
strategies that we have can't only be what seems right to us on how you universally parent. It's
Hmm.
knowing that each child individually and
Right.
individualizing the ways that we're doing that, not to be unfair, but according to what each child needs to grow
Hmm.
into the fullness of who they are and learning the structure, learning discipline, learning how to do hard things, pushing against resistance, repairing failure. And some kids are super, super sensitive, and all it takes is a word, and they're going to cry. And other
Hmm.
kids are like hard-headed, and they
Hmm.
need a lot more structure and consequence
Hmm.
to try to get it through. And so recognizing that dynamic and engaging in this more really adaptive way, recognizing we have biases that we bring from our past of our how we were parented, and then really trying to figure out how do we do this as a team with if you have a co-parent or you have a
Hmm.
spouse, how do we do this united and work out our differences, because almost always people are parented differently and you bring those biases together, and so what evolves is what do we do, and then
Hmm.
what child do we have and how do we engage with them that helps them grow adaptively into the
Yeah,
fullness of who
for
they become.
sure. And we can say universally, parenting is going to bring out in us a lot of stuff that we never even knew was there.
For sure.
And it is our job, right? To be able to put words to it. Like it is our job to go find people to help us to do that, and then for us as clinicians, when they come to us, to be able to slow those moments down. And just like you were saying, Aaron, if you're even good to just go through those five really quick, it could be one of these things
Yeah.
that we were talking about here
Yeah.
could be what you can start to listen and look for, or even if they might not have words, you could gently wonder with them, I wonder if it could be this. I
Yeah.
wonder if this could be it.
So just kind of all the things we've talked about, these kind of five factors that can factor into over super strict parents,
Hmm.
right? One is just that sense of adherence to what's right. It's the internal sense of righteousness to the individual, and they just have very hard time when things aren't right. So it's
You're
just
kind
very
of like that
difficult.
Enneagram one.
Right. It's a
Hmm.
very difficult time. There's also a fear of failure of parenting right and wanting to make sure we're doing a good job or very protective. And so when we have a lot of fear around how to parent well, we can kind of overly lean on structure to reassure our sense of doing what's right. And
Hmm.
so if I'm not sure, then we can lean on high structure and be super strict in that regard, just as a sense of protection to the child or a fear of failure of parenting. Also, when that sense a child does break the rule, there's an internal sense of a feeling of rejection, of feeling failed and disobeyed. There's an internal relational breach in that. Like, you didn't just break a rule, you did that to me, is a feeling that can happen that can lead to a high reaction, high rigidity, high reaction when that breach occurs. And those are kind of like the big three, and then this four and five are this pairing of kind of how you grew up, a rejection of how you were parented. If you were overly chaotic in your childhood and there weren't a lot of rules or a lot of structure, then sometimes we try to overcorrect, and try to fix it that way. And then there's also the sense of, for people that had a high structure, sometimes there's a feeling of it's hard to provide what you didn't get. And so if you didn't get a lot of resources, you didn't get a lot of grace, then it's very hard to give to others what you never received. And there's something in you that feels like, well, if I don't get it, nobody should get it. Even
Hmm.
though logically we know that's true, that feeling just says it's just not how it is. That's not how life is. That's not how it goes, because that's what we've lived. And so pushing against what you got or rejecting what you did get and then pushing back against what you didn't get,
Hmm.
both can play a role in how we show up in that regard.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I knew you'd be able to boom, 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 get it right there because it's helpful for us to be able to start to even conceptualize or just have an idea so we can help put words to it. Because that's a
Yeah.
big part of our job is to help co-discover, help co-regulate, help co-organize the experience in our clients so that way they can walk out really being able to experience themselves more, know themselves more, so
Mhm.
that they can be able to better lead themselves when they're out of our office.
Yeah. And we're not saying that super strict parents are necessarily bad parents, but we are saying that all of us are always trying to be better parents.
Yes, yes. And that in parenting, we need to go ahead and just off the bat, come at it from a posture of humility because ain't
Yeah,
nobody got the corner on it.
that's right.
And to let it be a time for us to grow, not a time for us to dig our heels in and just do more of what we always do.
Hmm.
Right? It's a time of being able to grow and to learn and to get to know ourselves more so we can know our kiddos more out of
Yes,
that process too.
that's
Yeah.
right. Good.
Awesome. Well, Erin, good conversation today. Thanks for having it. And then we'll keep our series going.
Yep, it's kind of fun. I like this. And as therapists, we're always wondering what's going on with that.
Right. What's really happening there?
What's we not just with our clients, we walk through life going, what's that about? What's going on over
Right.
there? You know what I mean?
I know. That's me on my vacation. I was like,
That's
what
right.
is going on here? Good Lord. Anyways, well,
All
thank
right.
you, Aaron.
We'll see you.
And yes, if anybody has a topic
Yeah, that'd be great.
of what's really happening with, maybe somebody also went on vacation and was like, what's going on here? Or just in life with coworker, family member, whatever, be sure to connect with us at inrelationship.us. That's inrelationship.us and just let us know a personality type
Yeah,
that
we'd
you'd
love to
like
hear
for
from
us
you.
to talk. Yes. Well, thank you, Erin.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See ya.